Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down the NBA slate on Draftkings and Yahoo for Tuesday, February the 23rd. Going to run through Tuesday's 9-game slate, break it all down team by team. We'll take a look at each team, go through each game on the slate, hit on what stands out to me looking at the slate the night before, give you guys my early thoughts, what does stand out to me from each team on this Tuesday slate. But before we do get started with the breakdown, guys, as always, I would appreciate it if you'd hit that like button down below. Be sure to hit the subscribe button as well. If you are new here, click that notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload. You also get notified every time I do go live. Once again, I will be live streaming this afternoon, probably around 4 Eastern time for tonight's slate. So if you're free in the afternoon, if you can tune into the stream, I'll be able to answer all you guys' questions. We can talk through everything once again. If there's any news that comes out throughout the day, as always, we can hit on that in the live stream. So yeah, tune into the stream Tuesday afternoon. Hit that like button, guys. Hit that subscribe button. Check out my Patreon content, link down below in the description as well. A lot of additional content over there. Our Discord chat is available for Patreon members. You can get access to my core plays, my cash and GPP sheets, my player pools, my rankings. A lot of stuff goes up on Patreon, so if you want to check that out, it's linked down below in the description. But yeah, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at Tuesday's 9-game slate. We will start off with the Hawks and Cavs game and start off on the Hawks side. So on the Hawks today, I think this is a team that I probably won't be getting much exposure to overall on this slate. I've kind of said it lately with the Hawks. The guys like the top three guys, Trae Young, Clint Capella, John Collins, I think they're all fine for tournaments. Trae Young, he has been playing really, really well lately. He's had some big games lately. 69 DK points last game against Denver, 58 against Boston, 57 against them when they played, before then. He's been playing really well over his last 3 games. I still don't know if I can consider Trae Young one of the top studs on this slate because there are other pay-up options I do prefer over him. And kind of the same with Clint Capella. There's just other centers priced around Capella that I prefer to go to. Capella does always have upside, can always put up big games where he goes for 20 and 20, but this doesn't feel like a slate where I'm really going to be going out of my way to play Clint Capella. Now, John Collins, he is really, really cheap, which I think does make him appealing. He's been pretty bad lately, but he was at least better last game against Denver. Did have 35 DK points in 30 minutes. His minutes have kind of been down lately, which I think is a concern. He's only played 30 minutes in 4 straight games. It doesn't look like he's going to be getting big minutes anymore. I don't know why, but they're only playing Collins 28 to 30 minutes, even in close games. The price tag is still low, though. If he does randomly get, 33, 34 minutes, he's probably going to pay off that price tag. So don't mind Collins, don't mind Trae Young, but I don't really like too much on this Atlanta team. Cam Reddish I've been playing lately, but on this slate with a ton of options, I don't think I'm really going to be going to Cam Reddish. So yeah, I think we can go ahead and move on to the Cavs side. Now, the Cavs, they are a pretty appealing team here. There are some guys I do like on Cleveland today. And for me, it does start with Jared Allen, 7,500 on DK. The price tag is coming up, but I still do really like Jared Allen at this price point. And on Yahoo, he's affordable over there as well, coming in at $30. Allen's definitely one of my favorite centers overall on the slate. One of the reasons I don't have that much interest in Capella is because I would probably rather get to Jared Allen for a little bit cheaper. Really, just since Andre Drummond, has been inactive and has not been playing. Allen's just been so good for DFS. We've seen some big games from him over his last 2. He's playing big minutes as well. Got 42 minutes in regulation last game against OKC. I don't know if he's going to play 42 minutes again, but I think 36, 38 minutes is likely for Allen here if it's a close game. This game should stay close. Allen is a guy that has massive upside when he does get the minutes. He's been really productive with the Cavs this year on a point-per-minute basis. Had 26 and 17 last game to go along with 2 assists and 3 blocks. He's just a dude that can go out there and put up, 20 and 20 any night. He's a great shot blocker. He can get you 4 to 5 blocks. He's been getting a decent amount of assists as well. Jared Allen, I think we're just going to keep seeing the prize rise on him, especially, if he keeps this role of playing 36, 38 minutes a night. He's going to be an 8K player, if not more than that. So I still really like Jared Allen, even at 7,500, especially in a pretty favorable matchup. One we always like to target going up against the Hawks. Now, Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, I think are both in play for tournaments. I don't think either guy I really get to in cash games or anything, but Sexton, we know the upside that he has. Another guy that's just going to play massive minutes, probably going to get close to 40 minutes if it's a close game. It's a really good matchup. I don't mind him at 7,200 on this slate. Darius Garland, his price has also come up, but he did have a big game last game against OKC. He's another guy that's just locked into big minutes right now. 36, 38 minutes is likely for Garland here. I wish he was a little bit cheaper, but even at 6,100, I don't mind going to him on this slate. Cedi Osman, someone I've been playing lately, I still do have some interest in him. Now, it is a bigger slate. We do have 9 games, so I think at 5,600, Osman Probably not a top play for me, but still someone I would do really have interest in. Probably someone I would get some exposure to if I was playing multiple lineups. I don't know if I'm going to get to him in my one lineup. Lately, I've just been playing one lineup lately. I don't know if Osman makes it into my one build, but I still do really like Cedi Osman. He's getting the minutes right now. Taurean Prince is doubtful once again. Larry Nance is going to remain out, so we should get probably 33, 34 minutes from Osman. He's been a productive point-per-minute player this year. It's a good matchup. I do have some interest in him as well, but I think that really does it for Cleveland today. Not too much interest in anyone else on this Cavs team. So moving on to the next game, Detroit and Orlando. So on Detroit, at the top, Jeremy Grant, 7,600. I don't think I can go to Jeremy Grant on this slate. I think there's just, again, other guys I'm going to prefer in his price range. Kind of the same with Mason Plumlee. Now, Plumlee is pretty affordable on Yahoo, so I don't mind him over there. He is still pretty cheap over there at $23. You could definitely play Plumlee at that price tag if you want to go to him on Yahoo. But I think, the value is where we can look to on Detroit today. So we do know that DeLon Wright is going to remain out. So last game, Dennis Smith Jr. got the start in place of DeLon Wright, but he only played 15 minutes. He didn't look really good at all. He had 12 DK points. Obviously, a lot of us were on him. I played him last slate. It did not go well. I don't really know what they're going to do with the point guard minutes today. Smith Jr. could play 16 minutes again. He could play 30. I really don't know. But last game, Saben Lee, he looked really good off the bench. He got a ton of minutes, played 33 minutes. I'd assume they're going to start Dennis Smith Jr. again, but maybe with how well Saben Lee played last game, they maybe move him into the starting lineup. It seems like he's kind of their, I don't want to say he's the guy they're going to go to, but I feel like after watching last game, Saben Lee just looks like the better guy right now. I think if he's playing well, he's likely to get 30-plus minutes again. I think it is going to depend on how Dennis Smith Jr. plays. If Dennis Smith Jr. comes out and plays really well out of the gate, maybe Saben Lee doesn't get as many minutes, but he's only 3,200. He's super, super cheap. I'm fine taking a shot on him on today's slate. I do like him as an early look value on both sites. He is pretty cheap on Yahoo as well. His point guard, only $12. I think he's going to be lower owned. Maybe he'll be lower owned. I'm not exactly sure. Smith Jr., I would assume, is still going to start and probably gets like 20 to 22 minutes. We probably get 24, 25 from Saben Lee. I think, it's all going to depend on who's playing best, though. If Dennis Smith Jr. is playing better, he probably gets a few more minutes. If Saben Lee's playing better like he was last game, then he probably gets a few more minutes. Lee just looked better last game. He can be productive when he does get minutes. He's super cheap, so he is someone I do like taking a shot on from Detroit. I'm sure, today I'll play Saben Lee, and then it'll be Dennis Smith Jr. who goes off just because that's how things have been going for me lately. I'm sure whatever choice I make here, whether it's Smith Jr. or Lee, it's probably going to be the wrong one in the end. But I think Saben Lee is the guy that I do prefer between him and Dennis Smith Jr. We do have some value from this Detroit team with those two guys. But like Sadiq Bey, Josh Jackson, I don't love at their price points. I think Josh Jackson looks better on Yahoo. He's still pretty affordable over there. He's small forward, which is always a tough position to fill, and he's only $18. I don't mind Josh Jackson on Yahoo, but we can go ahead and move on to Orlando. So on this Orlando team, really the only two guys I like today are Vucevic and Fournier. Vooch, I think, is just a lower-owned tournament option. Again, I think there's other studs I'd rather get to over him, but he did have a massive game against Detroit when they just played a couple days ago. Had 64 Draftkings points in 36 minutes. Detroit, they have been getting killed by big men this year. I'm pretty sure they've allowed the most fantasy points to centers this season. It is a great spot for Vooch. Again, I don't think he projects as a top play. He has upside, but I'd probably rather get to Giannis, probably rather get to some of the other studs we're going to talk about, like James Harden. So I prefer those guys over Vooch, but Vooch is definitely still viable. Evan Fournier, I wish he was a little bit cheaper, but he's getting a ton of usage right now. He took 15 shots last game, had 47 DK points. He's been really good since coming back from injury. He had that, down game against the Knicks, but last two against Golden State and Detroit, 47 DK points in both games. Again, I wish he was a little bit cheaper. I think if he was like $6K today, I'd have a lot more interest in Fournier. Still viable, it's close to $7K. He is still pretty cheap on Yahoo though. So again, Fournier, $24. I think if you're looking for a shooting guard in that mid-range, Fournier does look like a really good option. But don't see myself getting to anyone else on Orlando. Now, Al-Farouq Aminu, he did start last game. He played only 19 minutes. He was really productive on a point-per-minute basis. He had 25 DK points in that time. He had 2 blocks and 4 steals. I don't think I'm going to be going to Aminu today. Even if he does start again, he probably is only going to play like 22, 24 minutes. Sure, he could give you 20 DK points in that time, but he had a bit of an outlier performance getting 6 stocks last game in only 19 minutes. There's going to be better values, I assume. So that really does it for Orlando today. Moving on to Sacramento and Brooklyn. Looking at Sacramento, we got De'Aaron Fox at the top here for $8K. I do have a good amount of interest in De'Aaron Fox on this slate. I've been playing him a lot recently. It hasn't really been going well, but I still think he's too cheap, especially for a really fast-paced game against the Nets. I mean, these are two of the faster-paced teams in the league, two pretty bad defensive teams as well. I think Fox at 8K looks like a very solid option in that mid-range at point guard. Halliburton, Hield, probably won't be going to them. I think if I had to choose one, it would be Halliburton, but I don't see myself really going to either guy. Marvin Bagley, tougher to trust him now that Richaun Holmes is back, plus Harrison Barnes can maybe return. I just don't know if we're going to be getting 30-plus minutes from Bagley like he was playing earlier. We've seen this season, like Luke Walton he doesn't want to play Marvin Bagley. Bagley will only play like 20, 22 minutes some games. Some games he'll get like close to 30 minutes, but then some games he'll only get like 20 to 22. It makes things tough now that Holmes is back and maybe Barnes is back as well. Like, I just think the minutes are not going to be as high for Bagley. I don't think he's going to be as productive. I'm not that interested in Bagley, but I do have a good amount of interest in Richaun Holmes. I think in this matchup against this Brooklyn team, Richaun Holmes is definitely too cheap. I like him a good amount on both sides. 5,600 on DK. On Yahoo, he's not as cheap over there, but I still think he's definitely in play for me. $21 on Yahoo. We've seen the big-time upside that Richaun Holmes does have when he's getting, 30, 32 minutes. Last game, he did only play 21 minutes in his first game back from injury, but he was limited due to foul trouble. I think he was probably going to be, I would say he was on pace to play like 24, 25 minutes last game had it not been for foul trouble. I think today we get closer to 30 minutes from Holmes. He could play more if he's playing well. We'll have to keep an eye on this. There could be another minutes limit for him. We don't really know, but I think it's likely we get about 28 to 30 minutes if he is playing well. He's a point-per-minute player. He has a ton of upside against this Brooklyn team. Brooklyn's always been, bad at defending big men. Holmes is definitely too cheap if he's going to be playing, close to 30 minutes today. So I do like him a good amount on both sides, but don't see myself going to anyone else on Sacramento. All these other guys have just been priced to a point where they're not really interesting. Even if, Barnes sits or something, I don't really want to go to Whiteside now that Holmes is back. So I guess I'll mention Daquan Jeffries. So Daquan Jeffries, he did start last game. I don't know if he would start again. If Harrison Barnes were to return for this game, I'd assume that Harrison Barnes would be in the starting lineup, or Harrison Barnes would start over Jeffries. Last game, they went with Fox, Hield, Jeffries, Bagley, and Holmes as their starting lineup. I'd assume that, if Barnes plays, he's going to replace Jeffries. But if Barnes does remain out, we could get, 36, 38 minutes from Jeffries. He did play 40 minutes last game. He was really productive. I don't know if we can expect that again. But if Daquan Jeffries does wind up starting again, he probably plays closer to 30 minutes. He's only 3,800. It's a good matchup. It's a fast-paced game. He would be viable as a cheap option you could look to. But, yeah, that does it for Sacramento. Now, moving on to Brooklyn. So, really on this Brooklyn team, with Kevin Durant out still, the only two guys I have interest in are James Harden and Kyrie Irving. I think James Harden, it's close between him and Giannis. I think I do give the edge to Giannis, but James Harden, he's just been so good lately with KD out, playing massive minutes, getting close to 40 minutes a night. Great matchup here against Sacramento. It's a fast-paced game. Like, I would not be surprised if we get another 65, close to 70-point game from Harden. He's just doing everything right now. He's stuffing the stat sheet. He's contributing in all categories. His usage is through the roof. Love Harden. I think he's a top pay-up option once again. I think Kyrie is also viable. Kyrie is a little bit more risky, but we've still seen the upside that Kyrie has. I think I'd probably rather get to De'Aaron Fox for $800 less over Kyrie, but have no problems with Kyrie either. Him and Harden are obviously really good plays, when Kevin Durant is out, and both are still pretty affordable. Like, their price tags really haven't moved. Even, with Harden having big games lately, he's still $10,700. Kyrie's still only $8,800. So I do like both of those guys. Now, we will need to keep an eye on the status of Jeff Green. So Jeff Green is currently questionable. I think this will be something to monitor. If he were to get ruled out, I would feel a lot better about DeAndre Jordan's minutes. DeAndre Jordan did play 32 minutes last game. One of the reasons he hasn't played a ton this year, he's been limited somewhat, is because they've just elected to play Jeff Green at center. They've elected to go small. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that today, especially if Jeff Green's unable to play. So it's possible that we get 30, 32 minutes from DeAndre Jordan if Jeff Green is out. Even at 5,500, like, DJ is a point-per-minute player. He can give you a double-double, can block shots, can definitely give you 30-plus DK points when he's playing, around 30 minutes. And I think that's what we get from him today, if Jeff Green is out. So he would be someone I'd have some interest in from Brooklyn, but not too much interest in anyone else on this team outside of Harden, Kyrie, and DJ if Jeff Green is out. Moving on to the next game, though, Boston and Dallas. So in Boston, we know Marcus Smart's going to remain out. Guys like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kemba Walker, I don't think any of these guys are going to be players I really get to in my one lineup today. I think they're all viable as, lower-owned tournament options. I don't really expect any of them to be that popular. Tatum at 8,900, feels appropriately priced. This isn't really a great matchup, but we know the upside that Tatum has on a nightly basis. Same with Jaylen Brown. Kemba Walker, he had a huge game last game. Against Atlanta, he had 52 DK points in 34 minutes. It seems like he is back to playing 34, 36 minutes. So I think, the minutes limit, it's pretty much over for Kemba. He's going to be playing about 35, 36 minutes now. At 6,400, he feels appropriately priced. He'd probably be my favorite guy from Boston, from the top three. He'd probably be my favorite when you factor in salary, especially when you factor in that he is, getting normal minutes now. So I do have some interest in Kemba at 6,400. Tatum and Brown are both fine as well, but I don't really like too much on this Boston team. I think everyone's just kind of appropriately priced. There really aren't any standout plays from the Celtics, outside of maybe Kemba as being a little bit too cheap. But yeah, we can go ahead and move on to the Dallas side. So with Dallas, we do have a pretty big injury to watch here. So Kristaps Porzingis, he did not play on Monday night. I'd assume that he's going to play today. I'd assume they sat him out Monday so that he could play today. But this will be something to monitor. If Porzingis is out again, that's definitely going to open up some value from Dallas. We saw Tim Hardaway Jr. have a big game. Josh Richardson, they both had big games. I think both those guys would be really good values if Porzingis is out again. I think Brunson would be viable. Now, Maxi Kleber, he actually got injured in Monday's game, and he was not able to return. There's a very good chance that maybe he could be out as well. And if we do get a scenario where Porzingis and Kleber are both out, then Dallas would be super thin in the front court. We'd expect pretty good minutes from both Dwight Powell and Willie Cauley-Stein. Powell did start in place of Porzingis. He's still minimum salary. I would like him quite a bit if Porzingis is out again. I think Willie Cauley-Stein would also be viable. Really, it's tough to break down this Dallas team right now, not knowing the status of Porzingis. Like I said, I think my best guess is he probably plays today. I'd assume they sat him out, Monday so he could play today. But just keep an eye on it. If he's out, we talked about the guys that benefit. If he plays, really the only guys I'll be getting to on Boston or on Dallas if Porzingis plays are Luka, and maybe you could go to Porzingis, but he doesn't really feel like a top option. Luka's probably the only guy I'd get to from Dallas today if Porzingis plays. But again, I'd probably rather play Giannis. I'd probably rather play Harden. I think those guys I do prefer over Luka today, assuming Porzingis is good to go. Now, if Porzingis is out again, that does give a bump to Luka. I played Luka on Monday with Porzingis out, and it did not work, but I'd be fine going right back to him if Porzingis sits again. So this is just, an injury to watch. Definitely one of the big injuries we'll have to keep an eye on heading into Tuesday's slate. But we can go ahead and move on to the next game, the Warriors and the Knicks. So on the Warriors today, we do have a really big injury to watch here with Steph Curry. So Steph Curry right now is listed as questionable, but it did come out earlier that he is expected to play. For now, I'm going to assume that Curry's good to go, but this will be something to monitor. If Curry plays, this isn't a great matchup against the Knicks. The Knicks play really slow. They've been good defensively this year. I don't really like Curry that much on this slate. Guys like Kelly Oubre, Wiggins, Draymond, I don't have too much interest in either. Obviously, if Curry were to sit, though, they'd all, be much better plays. But like I said, I expect Curry to play. Plus, James Wiseman has a chance to return today. And if he returns, that is going to make me less interested in Draymond. I'd assume Wiseman would move back into the starting lineup, but that would be something to monitor. Kevon Looney, I think, still going to remain out, or he may also be questionable. Yeah, so Kevon Looney is also questionable. So if Kevon Looney and James Wiseman both play, that is going to hurt Draymond a little bit. Really, I don't like too much on the Warriors today if Curry plays. If Curry's out, that's going to change a lot, but I think Curry is, going to be good to go here. He is expected to play. So we can go ahead and move on to the Knicks side. Now, on the Knicks, there are some appealing plays on New York today. Julius Randle at the top, I think makes plenty of sense as a tournament option. I don't know if he's someone I'd really get to in cash games or in my one optimal lineup, but in tournaments, he has plenty of upside here against this Warriors team that does play fast. He should be low owned on this slate. I do have some interest in Julius Randle for tournaments. I think I'd prefer him over some of the guys priced around him, like Tatum. I'd probably prefer Randle over Tatum. Do have some interest in Randle. Now, RJ Barrett, I like him quite a bit here. 5,500 on DK does still feel too cheap for RJ Barrett. On Yahoo, he's also pretty affordable over there, coming in at $20 at the small forward position. So RJ Barrett been playing much better lately. He had that stretch where he was just playing super, super bad. I mean, he just wasn't doing much. His minutes were down. But the last two games, especially last game against Minnesota, Barrett did look really good. Played 34 minutes, had 31 DK points. He had 28 DK points against Orlando, had 36 DK points in 33 minutes against the Hawks. The minutes are tough to predict with Barrett. They've kind of been all over the place lately, but I think most nights we're going to get like 33, 34 minutes from RJ Barrett if he is playing well. At 5,500, he is definitely too cheap if that's the case, especially in a pace-up matchup against the Warriors. I don't want to look too much into this, but he did have a really good game earlier this year against Golden State, had 38 DK points in 36 minutes. Again, I don't think that really matters too much for today, but it was at least good to see him play well in this matchup earlier this season. If the minutes are there, if he gets 34, 35 minutes, Barrett is very likely going to pay off this price tag. So I do like him a good amount. I think he is definitely too cheap on this slate, and that goes for both sites. But really, outside of Randall and Barrett, I don't like too much else on the Knicks. I think everyone's just kind of appropriately priced. All these guys have been just like, none of them really get big minutes. Like Noel, even with Mitchell Robinson out, he's been playing like 28, 30 minutes. He's been fine, but you really haven't seen a big game from Noel. He just hasn't shown the upside to where you really want to roster him at this point unless he was cheaper, but he's not. Same with Elfrid Payton, just not getting enough minutes. He did play 32 last game, but he really hasn't been good on a point per minute basis lately. Yeah, I think it's just Randall and Barrett for me, not too much else I like on New York. So moving on to the next game, Philly and Toronto. Now this game, I don't think it's really that appealing on this slate outside of some guys on Toronto if Lowry were to sit. On Philly, I don't really like anything on the Sixers today. I think everyone's just kind of overpriced. Even Embiid on this slate, I don't really like that much. I'd rather get to Giannis. I'd rather get to Harden. I'd rather get to Luka. I mean, the Sixers, just keep it simple. They're just a fade for me. I'm not going to be playing anyone on the Sixers today, assuming everyone's good to go. Just nobody really stands out at their price point. Now, on the Raptors side, the Raptors are a much more appealing team today if Kyle Lowry remains out. If Kyle Lowry remains out, then I think guys like Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam do look like very solid options. You know, their price tags are starting to come up, but we have seen the massive upside that VanVleet and Siakam do have when Lowry is off the floor. So I would have some interest in those two guys. You know, Bembry has been starting in place of Lowry lately. He's been getting pretty good minutes. He only played 20 minutes last game. I don't have that much interest in him, but he would at least be viable if Lowry sits. Really, it would just be Siakam and VanVleet for me, though, if Lowry is out. Now, if Lowry plays, I really don't like much at all on this Toronto team because, you know, VanVleet and Siakam, they've been priced up for when Lowry's been out. Lowry himself would be viable at 7,100. He does feel a little bit too cheap. But yeah, this game is just not that appealing. It should be a great game to watch, but in terms of DFS, I don't really like too much here outside of some of these Toronto guys if Lowry were to sit. But yeah, we can go ahead and move on to the next one. So looking at the next game, Minnesota and Milwaukee. Now in Minnesota today, we do know, you know, D'Angelo Russell is going to remain out. That doesn't impact too much at this point, given, you know, guys like Beasley, Rubio, Edwards have all kind of been priced up to reflect that. You know, Karl-Anthony Towns at 9,600. I do have some interest in him as a lower-owned pay-up option. You know, he doesn't really stand out as a top pay-up option. He doesn't really stand out as a top play at his price point, but he has been good lately. He did look really good last game against the Knicks. We finally got a big game from Cat. Had 61 DraftKings points, played 31 minutes. He did have 5 fouls in that game, so I think he was going to be on pace to play more than 31 minutes. I think tonight, as long as this game is close, we probably get 32, 34 minutes from Cat as long as he's not in foul trouble. In 9,600, you know, Cat does have 55, 60-point upside when he's playing 33, 34 minutes. He's a guy you can get to in tournaments. Again, there's guys I prefer over him, but yeah, Cat's for sure in play. I don't really like too much else though in Minnesota, like Beasley, Rubio, Edwards. I don't have that much interest in. I think all of them are just appropriately priced, if not a little bit overpriced. If I was going to get to anyone on Minnesota today, I think it would be Cat and probably not much else. But moving on to the Bucks side, so Giannis, you know, it always starts with Giannis. I think once again, he looks like one of the better pay-up options on this slate. I like Giannis a ton on both sides. 11K on DK. You know, honestly, does still feel a little bit too cheap on Yahoo. He's affordable over there as well, coming in at $55. So in this matchup against this Minnesota team that has been terrible defensively this year, that does play at a fast pace, Giannis has massive upside here. My only worry is that, yes, this game could blow out. The Bucks are big favorites here, but the Bucks have not been playing that well lately. I mean, they've been winning games, but they haven't really been blowing teams out. So I think we see a close game here, or at least a close enough game to where Giannis does play his normal 34, 35 minutes. And if that's the case, he could easily put up 65, 70 DraftKings points. We know this is one of the best point per minute players. He's an incredibly high usage player. He's going to dominate the usage. He can contribute with peripherals. He can just stuff the stat sheet. He legit gives you triple-double upside every night. Between him and Harden, I think I do give the edge to Giannis, but it's very close. I think those look like two of the better pay-up options overall tonight. I think Chris Middleton looks solid as well. You know, Chris Middleton, he had been terrible lately, but he finally bounced back last game. He finally had that big game. And I had been saying it, I kept saying at some point Chris Middleton's going to have a big game and he's going to win you a tournament. And it finally happened against Sacramento. Had 62 DraftKings points in 33 minutes. Without Drew Holiday, we know the usage on this Milwaukee Bucks team is going to be dominated by Giannis and Chris Middleton. So I have no problems getting to Middleton on this slate as well. You know, now that his prices come up, I don't think he really stands out as a top play. but still someone I do really like and I do have interest in. But I'm not really going to anyone else on Milwaukee. I think it's just Giannis and Middleton for me, and probably no one else. DJ Augustine I had some interest in last slate, but his prices come up. It's a bigger slate. Just don't want to go there. So moving on to the next game, Portland and Denver. Now in Portland, this is a back-to-back for the Blazers, which is something to monitor. I'd assume all these guys are going to be good to go, but it is a back-to-back. Starting with Damian Lillard at 10,400. I think Lillard, he's just a lower-owned tournament option. He doesn't really look like a top pay-up stud. I'd rather get to the other guys we've talked about. Lillard always has upside, can always pop off for a big game, but I don't know if this is going to be a slate where I really go out of my way to play Lillard. Kind of the same with the rest of this Portland team. Like, everyone on Portland does feel just a little bit too expensive for my liking. If I had to play anyone, honestly, my favorite guy from the Blazers would probably be Derrick Jones Jr. At his price point on Yahoo, he is really cheap over there. I do want to mention him. He's only $13. He did have another solid game on Tuesday night, but he did lose a lot of minutes due to blowout. They got blown out on Monday against Phoenix. They lost by over 30 points. Derrick Jones Jr. only played 22 minutes, but he was still really productive, had 23 fantasy points in that time. I'd assume if today's game's close, we probably get 30, 32 minutes from Derrick Jones Jr. He's been productive lately. He's only $13 on Yahoo. If you need a cheap small forward, I think he does look like a solid option, but I really don't like too much from this Portland team. Nobody stands out as a top play at their price point. So moving on to the Denver side, looking at the Nuggets here, we do know that Paul Millsap, JaMychal Green are going to remain out, while Gary Harris and PJ Dozier are also out. So I would assume we see the same starting lineup for Denver that we saw last game. Jamal Murray, Will Barton, Michael Porter Jr. They did start Zeke Nahi last game. I'd assume they do that again, and then you'd have Jokic at the 5. On this Denver team, I think the guys I like most are the top two, obviously Jokic and Murray. This is a great spot for Jokic against this Portland team that, has been really bad defensively this year. Enes Kanter, he is a terrible defender, so this is a matchup where Jokic should have a ton of success. There's other centers I like today. There's a lot of good centers in the mid-range and a little bit cheaper. So I still don't consider Jokic a top stud option. Again, prefer Giannis, prefer Harden, but I'd say Jokic is probably behind those two guys, Giannis and Harden. He'd be my third favorite stud on this slate. The upside's definitely there. It's just in my one lineup today, can I pay up at center to get Jokic in? I don't think so. I think there's guys I like in the mid-range a lot at center today that I'm going to go to over Jokic. But obviously Jokic has massive upside. We know the upside's there on a nightly basis. Same with Jamal Murray. The price tag, it's really getting up there for Jamal Murray, but he has been playing so well lately. Him and Jokic have just been dominating the usage. We've seen both of them put up big games. Murray is still pretty affordable on Yahoo, so I think, over there at $33, I'm totally fine going to Jamal Murray on the slate. Honestly, he does still feel a little bit too cheap on Yahoo, so do like him quite a bit on Yahoo, but like Michael Porter Jr., Will Barton, don't have that much interest in. Monte Morris had a big game off the bench last game. He did get 32 minutes. He's probably going to play 30 to 32 minutes again off the bench with all these guys still out for Denver. I just don't know if I really want to go to Monte Morris at 5K just because he's not a great point per minute player. Normally, he's not going to give you the game that he got last game. I really don't want to chase that from Monte Morris, so don't have that much interest in him. Zeke Nahi, he started and he actually played a good amount of minutes last game. He did play 30 minutes, but he did nothing when he was on the floor. Only had 11 fantasy points in that time. He's still super, super cheap. So I guess if Nahi does start again, he could be viable at 3,100. But really, the guys I like most from Denver and the guys I feel most confident in are definitely Jokic and Murray. And Murray, I like quite a bit at his Yahoo price tag. But we can go ahead and move on to the last game of the night, Washington and LA. So on the Wizards, this is also a back-to-back for the Wizards. This is something to monitor because Russell Westbrook, he has been sitting out on back-to-backs this year, but it is worth noting that he did play on their last back-to-back. So since Westbrook played on their last back-to-back, I am going to assume that he does play today. This will be something to keep an eye on. Assuming Westbrook plays, I really don't like too much from this Washington team outside of, the top two guys, Westbrook and Beal. Nobody really looks great on the Wizards. Like, it's not a great matchup. Everyone just kind of feels appropriately priced, but we know the upside that Westbrook and Beal both have on a nightly basis. There's other studs I'd rather play, but I think Westbrook and Beal as lower-owned tournament options do make some sense. If I had to pick one, again, I probably would rather go to Westbrook just because, he can contribute more with peripherals. He's not as scoring dependent. But on the Clippers side, it is a great matchup for these Clippers guys. The Wizards have just been so bad defensively this year. They do play at a really fast pace. I definitely have interest in Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Between the two, I prefer Kawhi. I just think Kawhi's the better point per minute player. When they're closely priced like this, I think Kawhi's usually always the guy I want to go to, especially because he is small forward, and small forward is always a tougher position to fill, whereas shooting guard is usually easier to find good options at shooting guard, tougher to do so at small forward. So I do have some interest in Kawhi at 9,400. PG is fine as well, but I think I would rather go to Kawhi. But Lou Will just feels too expensive now with Kawhi and PG back. Same with a lot of these other guys. Like really on the Clippers team, it's just Kawhi and PG, and I don't really like too much else. Even in a really good matchup like this, nobody from the Clippers stands out as a top play outside of the top two guys, Kawhi and PG. So yeah, that really does it for the Clippers today, and that does it for all 9 games on this 9-game slate. So I hope you guys did enjoy the team-by-team breakdown. Hopefully this video did help. If you did enjoy, hit that like button down below before you do get out of here. Hit that subscribe button as well. Be sure to click the notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload. You also get notified every time I do go live. And like I said earlier, guys, I'll be live around 4 Eastern time for tonight's slate. If you're able to, Tuesday afternoon, to tune into the stream, I can answer all your guys' questions. We can break everything down once again. We can talk through any injury news that comes out throughout the day. So be sure to tune into the live stream. Hit that like button, guys. Hit that subscribe button. And yeah, good luck tonight. Appreciate you watching. We'll see you in the next one.